Good morning. The Building and Facilities Construction Committee meeting of Wednesday, December 18th, 2024 is online. And it's 10, what is it, 10? Up there.
10:05.
10:05, thank you. I ask that you give your name and approval for being televised and for the convenience of the recorder. Shirley Mazinski,
Linda Brown.
Carol Gogolinski.
Fred Fontaine.
Bob Wormy.
thank you, and Matt Wojcik is with us. First item of,
Ray is
I am too.
Oh, Ray.
Ray Clark's remote.
Hi, Ray.
Hello.
I'm going to get motion sick looking at Ray. So if you don't mind, Ray, I'm
Is he
not going to
down
look.
there?
It's a lot of driving.
And we have a guest in the audience. You give your name?
We are not.
Dave Wendolowski, 48 Orange Street.
Thank you, Dave. First item on the agenda is the highway building project. Do we have any updates? Matt?
So
Go ahead.
before we do any more process on this, we're waiting for the dam inspection report, which we haven't received yet. We got the Title V report. So that's, in terms of town meeting action, that's where we are. We haven't done the notice of taking or any other discussion yet, and won't until dam inspection report comes in. We have, as you know, a deadline approaching for the use of our ARPA funds from the federal government. That is December 31st. And so we have a draft scope of work for Weston and Sampson to bring us to a package that can be presented to Springtown meeting. So he's calling it 15% design, but the list of things he has is closer to 30% design. Basically locating building envelope, elevations, the meets and bounds of the lot, and some of the preliminary, testing, some of which we have already started, but this will be more detailed. So once you identify the building envelope, we'll be doing some quick soil tests, so we have some structural fill, make sure that the building is located properly. That's about $141,000 worth of design work, because there's going to be some permitting that some of the applications will get started too. And that is basically the remainder of the ARPA account that's not been allocated to another project. So whatever we already had a set aside for ARPA for this highway barn. We took some money away from that in order to do the work at the fire station with cash money, and so that went down from about 159 to about 141. But that's pretty much where we're at. So the expectation is that, as we set a deadline for April, so that we would be able to post everything with the town clerk about a month before town meeting.
Post.
Plans and
Oh,
pictures and,
for town meeting.
yeah. And I think that's the appropriate place to stop the design work. So if town meeting doesn't vote it, we won't have obligated too much.
Okay.
It's not the taxpayers' money, and ultimately it is, because it's federal money, right? But it's
Right.
not local taxpayer money. So it's, but you got to bring the project proposal to a point where people know what they're voting for. So that's pretty much the goal.
Okay, questions?
Yes.
Linda?
Yeah. I guess, so I guess this is moving right along, except for the dam inspection. So when, because I know there was an urgency for the, because of the air quality and the trailers outside and all that. And the house looked usable. So what is the expectation to move the people into that house? Or will it have to be renovated, or?
I'm going to be most comfortable not moving staff there until we have closed and exchanged a deed for money.
Yeah.
And that's an insurance question as well as, I really don't want to lease it in advance of the move. I just want to get it all settled. And so based on the current time frame that we're on, assuming the dam inspection report is on its way, holidays, I think we're looking at March.
Thank you.
Because once the notice of taking is filed, there's a limited amount of time for that to run.
Anyone else?
I just,
Carol?
I have like a statement here that I want to read, because I want to make sure that these things, we've talked about them before, and I want to make sure that they're in the record. Okay? So it'll only take me a minute. All right. Okay. Matt Wojcik, the town administrator, assured the finance committee that if the town meeting approved the funding for the eminent domain taking of the Rydell property on Rydell Road, the money would not be paid until the town was assured that the highway barn could be built on the property. The reason the purchase price exceeds the appraisal is because the existing house will be used as an office for the highway department. However, it is critical that the town is absolutely certain that the proposed project will not be impacted by the Rivers Act due to the presence of two small streams and a pond on the property. It is also important to confirm that the house, which will serve as the future office, does not need to be removed to accommodate a new garage because of restrictions related to the Rivers Act conservation issues or other regulatory challenges. The town conservation agent has stated that Riddlebrook and the other brook are intermittent streams. This should be verified in writing with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. If Riddlebrook is determined to be a perennial stream, it would significantly reduce the available building land due to the 200-foot no-build zone on both sides of the stream. In such a scenario, I believe the usable land would be approximately 2.8 acres near the existing house and about 2 acres on the lot where the old shack is located. This does not account for required zoning setbacks, and the two parcels would be separated by a 400-foot wide strip of unbuildable land. Mike Fitzpatrick mentioned that the upgrading of the crossing over the brook would not be costly, as the town highway department could perform the work themselves using pipe. However, this needs to be verified. If a precast box culvert becomes necessary, the cost could easily reach $1.5 million or more, especially if provisions for animal crossings are required. Mr. Wojcik stated that the seller will provide a dam inspection verifying the safety of the dam. Additionally, the seller has agreed to remove the old shack prior to closing. However, it's worth considering what kind of permits might be required for removal of the shack if it is located within the riverfront area. Further, the water line will need to be upgraded to support sprinklers. If all the concerns I have raised materialize, the town could potentially end up spending $4 to $5 million for approximately 5 acres of non-contiguous land before any buildings has even begun. I have raised these questions previously, and in response have been told that perhaps I do not want a new town garage. This is not the case. I fully support the project, but want to ensure that the town is getting its money worth for the property being purchased. The town must approach this acquisition the same way someone in a private section would, with due diligence and thorough evaluation of all potential issues. I request that this statement be entered into the minutes of this meeting, and I will email a copy to the minutes taker and ask that a copy be forwarded to the selectmen as well.
Okay, I have a question.
Yes.
So has your comments been, excuse me, are they coming from you alone or from Finance Committee? Because you brought Finance Committee up.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what happened in Finance Committee. I brought these things up in front of the Finance Committee, as you'll recall. And after I brought these up, nobody would even make a motion, or I think motion was made, I think exactly, no one would second it to even go forward with it, okay? And I was the actual person that seconded it so that they could vote on it, okay? Because I'm in favor of it. But I just want to make sure that we don't get all of a sudden, oh, we didn't know this and we didn't know that, and this is going to cost us more. That's the only thing that I'm concerned about, you know, that intermittent stream. You know damn right well we were right into it. We hadn't had rain in a long time. Because when I had Gilboa Brook over there at the pit, that thing went dry a lot of times. So they said, nope, it was too dry. It's still a perennial stream. I talked to Andy there recently. I said, why don't you go do something about that brook when it dries out? He goes, they keep telling us it's a perennial stream. Well, I'll tell you, Rydell Brook is more of a stream than Gilboa Brook. So these are the things that, I'm not saying I just wanted to make sure, absolutely sure. Because I actually did a little thing here, I can pass it around, on if that is a river, if that's considered a river, I'll pass that down, how much, the yellow is what you'll have to build on, okay?
Do you have one of these?
Whoops.
Do you have one for that?
Sure.
Oh, here, pass that. Yeah, I got one. Where else is that, Carol?
So this is 200 foot, and that's what you got left to build on. Plus, it means you're crossing twice, too, if you think about it, because you got to cross Rydell Brook to get over to the house.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions for Carol or?
I do.
Linda?
So when you started reading, I thought you were reading minutes from the
No, no.
Finance
No,
Committee.
it's not minutes.
That's a letter
No,
from you,
from
but
me.
you're just quoting what
why-
was
Right.
said.
And that's
Okay.
why I asked.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I
Just
didn't-
wanna be clear.
I didn't think that I made that impression, but I didn't mean to make that
That's
impression.
okay.
But I'm thinking, as the Finance Committee, I mean, I think that my responsibility, too, is to be watching out for the finances, so.
Okay. You have another question? Anybody?
No.
Ray? I keep forgetting you're on Zoom, and I just don't want to leave you out. Any questions,
I
Ray?
appreciate that. I'm good. No, I'm good.
And please speak up if we're moving forward and you have something to say.
I'm certainly not quiet.
That's good. All right, we,
Madam Chair.
yes,
So I don't necessarily disagree with the things that Carol has said. I do have to make a couple of things clear by way of response.
sure.
One of which is I will not engage in the game of second-guessing the people who have the statutory authority to determine compliance with the Wetlands Act. So if you want to take that ball and go to DEP, you can do it on your own, but I have a qualified conservation agent who's made his determination based on the evidence that he has viewed. And typically, DEP is going to yield to that,
You say typically.
typically. Listen, if you want to accelerate it to DEP, I will not, you can.
No,
But as far as I'm concerned, I've hired a qualified individual. Now, here's the deal. If he's wrong, I'm not going to keep him here, right? That's how I roll, right? I have a fiduciary duty. So when I send an expert, a certified wetland specialist,
Yeah.
who's in the business and who is hired by numerous communities to do this job, if he has a determination, it flips around. I now have the ability to rely upon his opinion. I have met my fiduciary duty because I've hired a qualified expert and he has made a determination. So if there are people in this town that want to appeal his review of this to the DEP, that can have at it. But I'm not going to do that because I've done the work I've needed to do. Secondly, and I, listen, in our modern world, I get it. The number one issue that people have across the United States of America is they don't believe the people that work for them in government are competent. I get it. I understand the skepticism. I've done everything I can in the last 8 years to not do the stupid things that a lot of my colleagues do. So the pavement was done wrong on Gilboa Street. What did we do? At the contractor's own expense, they went out, they tore it all up, and they reinstalled the proper mix at the proper depth. Every single contract we have here, we have gone back and forth on this roof project here, getting the contractor to properly solder together the copper flashing joints up there. We didn't just get sick of it, wipe our hands and say, go ahead, knock on whatever, right? Building's 104 years old, no. They were told they were going to come back and at their own expense, every single time, keep doing it until they did it right. If this property turns out to not be buildable, we will not buy it, period. Because I will not own that. I will not have my reputation and my dedication to the town sullied by rushing through something that is not a good project. At the same time, while I recognize there is skepticism about every single piece of property we could possibly suggest. We have been talking about this for 3.5 years. We have done a feasibility study. We had experts look at all of the properties we thought were candidates. You have a town with water and ledge, and a lot of the best buildable property has residential structures on it. So I think we've done a very open and transparent process up to this point to detail the need for a highway barn and to try to choose a location. So this is what we settled on. We're going to pursue it with due diligence to the very end. I'm not going to stop because it might be this or it might be that. We have to keep moving forward because by the time this thing, if this is the property, by the time we get Springtown meeting approval, issue a bond, we have to have a vote at the ballot to exclude it, right, under a debt exclusion. By the time that entire process is done, we're still going to be 1.5 years or almost 2 years away.
Okay, I got one question on that, a couple of things to say on that. As you said, you people came back. If this thing comes back, that it's the Rivers, are we going to sue the agent?
No, but he won't work here anymore.
Whoopee-doo.
Somebody- But then you won't buy the property either.
No.
What do you want,
No, no, no,
Carol?
no,
If we
no,
don't
no.
buy the
No,
property,
no, I'm
I
not
fire the
saying-
guy.
I'm not
What's
saying-
left?
Hold it.
Okay,
Let's
excuse me,
hear
Alan.
each other.
Okay, yeah. I guess what I'm saying is, okay, so you won't, but you're saying you're buying the property.
No, I'm doing due diligence before we buy the property.
Okay, all right, but you're thinking that there's no way that the DEP is going to come back on that being a Rivers bill. And you said you weren't sure. But if it was that he was wrong, then, but basically, there's not going to be any,
I am going to rely upon the expert that we have hired who is properly credentialed and experienced,
okay,
right?
well, if
So
it comes back to bite us.
Hold it.
Excuse me.
But why would it come back to bite us? We have hired a properly qualified individual. We could go around and around and around on this kind of intellectual inquiry with every project we do. At some point, an engineer looks in the hole and says, that valve connection is appropriate. Makes the sign of the cross, and we backfill, we compact, and we pave over it. Even if there was some other opinion about how that box was to be installed or that valve tightened. Once the engineer comes and says, that's it, backfill, it's over. We don't dig into every single last possible thing that could possibly be wrong, because everything we would build would be overbuilt at that point, and we would take 10 years to do anything.
I disagree with you on that. Go ahead.
Shirley, I have something to add to that. Being on conservation for 25 years, I know that nothing will happen with DEP until there's a filing of a notice of intent,
Okay.
which will happen after the property is purchased.
There's-
And then it's up to the DEP to weigh in on.
But it doesn't have to. I mean, we could accelerate that process,
Okay.
if that's what the
There
community
you
wants.
go.
But I'm sorry, I just think we've, at some point, we've got to find a piece of property that is going
Yeah.
to be suitable. And I think the thing that people are sometimes missing is if you get the ideal piece of property, good for you, but what you've done is taken the ideal piece of property off the tax rolls, put a public building on it, and prevented it from being used for economic development or other purposes. So there is a trade-off when we cite public buildings in this day and age with communities that have largely approached build-out. So I'm not going to take the corner of Rydell Ellen Main and put which is an ideal commercial location. It has been part of the commercial development plan for the owner across the street for years, and smack a public building on it. And walk away from millions of dollars of investment and hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax revenue for the town. Just not going to do that.
Okay, could I
One more-
respond to
yep.
that? Yeah, I've heard this thing before about, I saw the same thing happen in Northbridge. They had a chance to buy a building, and they carried on that they were going to lose all the tax revenue off of this building by changing it into a highway department. All I did the numbers, and it would take 200 years before they would lose that much tax revenue. So if you're into a situation where you where you're spending a few more $1 million, how long is the tax revenue back on something like that? Now, I will say, though, I will say that this man here is the best man I have ever seen with numbers in my life. I am always amazed at him.
And who were you speaking of?
Right here, Matt Wojcik.
All right.
He is brilliant.
I appreciate the
and so,
compliment, and you have to know how much I respect you.
and,
I'm not,
Oh.
I don't want to argue, Mr.
So I'm
Madam
not
Chair,
gonna argue with the numbers with him.
Carol. I just, what you're hearing me say
Yeah,
is that I still got to get a building. I got to get my people out of that building because ultimately, now that I am aware, as the personnel director, that the building we have is not a safe place to work, we have an obligation to change that situation. And we engaged in a process 3 years ago, and even before we hired Weston and Sampson, there was a local committee, and the select board designated Selectman Fitzpatrick to be on that committee, to do a needs assessment for all of our departments. So I feel like we've been at this for a long time. And one of the things that we've tried to do was eliminate all significant town holdings from the consideration first, right? Because we already own the land, it hasn't already been built on by the town, so we didn't have any other need, library, senior center, fire station, police station, that made a good case for it to be built upon. I think what we found out when we went out and started walking, the stuff that we thought would really might have worked out really well, and to me, the biggest disappointment was behind the, we're going to call it different things, right? An old school building, Veterans Hall, whatever you want to call it. We got back there, that wetlands complex is much more impressive than this, right? Because there's a tremendous amount of water flowing through it. Buff tipped over a slab and made it into a bridge, and then he started backfilling the back with a lot of material that's not construction-grade structural material. So the fear I had was we're going to have to strip all that soft material off, get back to virgin ground, and at that point, we may be darn close to the water table and other considerations. And that, when we walk through the woods back there, not only is there the swamp that you cross, but now is that technically Centerville Brook there?
it is.
Is a pretty significant amount of water moving through that. Now, we already know that there are people on Main Street that get flooded out when Centerville goes over its banks, right? So I have people come in and complain. So now I'm going to put a great big pile of impervious surface into the watershed of a brook that already floods into people's personal property. So that was a disappointment. Buckeye was never really an option, to be honest, because by the time Rydell Brook gets onto that property, it's a classic, so I used to trap muskrat because I did anything to make money, but it's your classic New England stream, right? It's really deep, but it's not very wide, and it winds its way around trees and ledge outcroppings, right? You're not touching that thing. Then they dumped a whole bunch of stuff from the pipeline, mostly concrete, that they dug out and just dumped it there. The grade is nasty. At the end of the day, we also had neighbors in front. So if we were going to start doing a lot of loading and unloading of equipment and driving trucks back and forth all the time, those properties in front would have every reason to be upset that they were going to be dealing with that all the time. So there were good reasons why we took town property out of consideration. But I want to get back to the point that I think is really important to Carol, and it's important to me too. We will do all the necessary due diligence. Like I said I wouldn't, maybe I will, because what's it to me, right? It's just another source of confidence going forward. We'll get DEP, we'll inquire about the NOI process and whether we can begin to have that determination done in advance. But I still hate to do it, because why am I paying this guy to go out and do stuff? If I'm going to doubt everything he does, why am I paying him?
Well,
Right.
the other thing too, though, is, excuse me,
Yeah.
can I say this? If you look at this, the reason that I'm saying that is that if that is so, you don't really have, a good place to build. And that's all that I'm talking about. And then the other thing too, what is this, what do you think is going on with the crossing? Are we going to have, do you really think we're going to be able to get through with those pipes?
I think to your point, if it's an intermittent stream, it's going to be a different discussion.
Oh, definitely. I
I
mean, we
think if
definitely
you get
got,
to the point where that, so this has been the conversation.
Exactly.
Right? Whether or not that stream that goes in between these two surveyors' lots is actually a perennial stream called Riddle Brook.
right,
Or if this little stream that runs into the western side of
Yeah.
the pond is Riddle Brook. We can all have our opinion.
All right.
I'll tell you mine. This down here is Riddle Brook. This up here is an intermittent stream.
Mm-hmm.
And our dear friends, the beaver,
Mm-hmm.
on Ellie and Evans' property,
yeah.
we keep moving them around because
beavers?
they flooded out
Yeah,
Northwest Maine, right? So we couldn't even pave Northwest Maine because the water level had come up
Yeah.
so high that we just couldn't even do it. So I say we went through the proper channels,
Yeah.
including permission from the property owner.
right,
To relocate or suggest to the beaver that they live somewhere else. Without, if we didn't, not with the barrel of a gun. But there's a whole bunch of wetlands, you see one on this map, this wetlands complex. Now, so you can take an intermittent stream and make it look perennial if you're a beaver. Because now you've bottled up a whole bunch of water and you're letting some of it go, so it's got the supply and now it's gonna run all the time. Whereas if it was still wide open and it's previous to beaver condition, the water would have stayed in the wetland, dispersed and infiltrated, and the stream would dry up on a regular basis. So that's why we hire Brandon.
yeah,
right, Is to make those, is to have that discussion. If there's, now, we've had a lot of water recently, but when we went back and did our walkthrough on that piece of property, we were in a mild drought condition, and there was water in that hole. The beaver did that. There's just no, the way the stream bed lays there, it doesn't have the gravelly bottom and other wetlands vegetation that would suggest that it is running constantly. You would be looking for small stones and water plants that live when the water supply is constant. And you don't see that there. But I'm not qualified to make that determination. Brandon is. And that was Brandon's finding.
okay. Part of the reason
Now,
why.
here's my, one other thing. I'll take a step into controversy, and I know it's pain for you. But our prior conservation agent, when it came to Gilboa Brook on Gilboa,
Yeah,
erred on the side of caution. How's that for diplomacy?
Okay.
I did go to school for diplomacy, you know. He erred on the side of caution. How often is that water really running up on that side?
it does dry up on a basis, because where it was intimately, I would walk up and down it.
Now, in
and
his
It was totally
defense,
dry
in
in certain times of the
Steve's
year.
defense,
Yeah,
he analyzed the conditions that were in existence at the time that he visited, right? So if he made the necessary duration measurement to qualify it as a perennial, then what was he supposed to do, right? He's in the same boat as Brandon is on this piece of property. He has made his observations as a qualified wetlands scientist, so now we're left with it. So even if, the town of Uxbridge keeps telling me that that's a wetland over there next to the road that goes by the Cubes of Gilboa.
Oh, okay.
Over the new bridge. It's a hole in the ground
yeah,
that Mr. Schuster, no doubt, dug to do any number of projects that he was doing. And at that point, Gilboa Brook is raging. Once you get past, that's town property back there. It's in the town of Uxbridge, but it's owned by the town of Douglas. But when that flooded out, I went down there and I was like, this is a hole. The the lines were so clean, somebody was in there with a machine. And the trees that were growing at the bottom weren't much more than 30, 40 years
Yeah.
old. So we can probably find pretty good photographs
Yeah.
from the 60s and 70s where there'd be no vegetation in there at all. It's not a wetland, but our colleagues in another town insist that it is, right? These things are open to dispute quite often. At some point, we have to say, we're going to believe so-and-so, and we go forward with so-and-so's opinion. Now, I just assured you that if it would make you feel better and more confident about this project, I want to go into town meeting and not have questions. So we'll get DEP involved. It just puts me in a bad spot, because now I'm evaluating my, putting my guy on the
Well,
spot.
you can put it on me.
Well,
I mean, it's, and part of it, excuse me, part of it
Yes.
is, if you look at the maps, when I was reading the maps, it's showing Riddlebrook's name on that one going down there.
yeah, so there's only
So-
one map that matters, and we have had this
Right,
conversation.
okay,
And that is the United States Geological Survey
okay,
map.
right,
So that stream, I don't believe on the USGS map is marked Riddlebrook. I believe it's
Okay.
this one.
okay, okay. I mean, I will say that, you know, I'm hoping it's not a perennial stream, okay? I'm hoping it's not. I just don't want it to come back and bite us, that's all. I'm not against the project.
So
but
we
I
can't
just,
take
you know,
the house away.
we're going to keep the house.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah,
So, and I think we're in 100%
Right.
agreement on this. And I'm
Oh,
putting words
sure.
in your mouth because we've had a conversation
That's a
outside of this meeting to this effect.
good house,
But it's what it eliminates from the cost of the highway bond.
right,
So if we have space where somebody can use the bathroom, quick break room, but more importantly, have a place to sit and work that has a cable connection and heat and hot water and all the things that we're supposed to provide, that is going to eliminate a significant portion of the most expensive per square foot basis cost of the building.
right,
And we're not building pure cold storage. We'll have some cold storage that's got a roof over it outside the building, but the inside of the building will be heated to a minimum so that we can safely wash out salt from the trucks
Right.
and do all that. So what are we talking? 38 degrees, 42 degrees in the coldest part of the winter? I'm not going to spend a lot of energy on it, but it is going to be surrounded by walls and a roof. But that, we can buy a kit for that and save a boatload of money and not do all this fancy, complicated design. About the only thing in this building that is not a huge change for the town, but it will be more expensive than our current arrangement, is the small crane that we'll install in this building to take the bodies off of our sanders. But they're heavy. Right now, we use a loader. It is really not the best thing to do. Your chains have to be in perfect condition, whatever else you use.
let me just shut this off, sorry about that.
It's your stockbroker, just sell, sell, sell. Today's a good day to sell.
That's my daughter bothering me.
That's probably the most complicated thing in terms of priority
Yeah.
investment inside the building that
Right.
would be more expensive than a slab and boards. Right. And the washout space, but that's plumbed, that'd be plumbed. That's kind of where we're at with it.
Okay.
Maybe we ended up in a good place, because we'll make this inquiry of DEP. If they'll even, now they are out here on a regular basis because of a dispute in another part of town, so maybe we can catch them.
Okay. All right, that'd be good, and then we'll be, we go before the meeting in the springtime, we'll have these answers too.
Or even, sorry if I could, even, it's called an ANRAD, Area Resource Delineation,
Okay.
done.
Yes,
And
you
that
know
just-
more than I do on that, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to say where the building's going.
Right.
It just tells you
Just-
what wetlands and what they are.
Right.
But hasn't something like that been done by,
It wasn't a formal process, though. So Linda's talking about a formal process, piece of
Okay,
paper and engagement. We didn't want to even begin to have the conversation about the eminent domain conversation at town meeting until we had Brandon at least tell us that he had done some measurements and some investigation. we can rely upon that. I don't want to make your meeting longer than it is, but, Madam Chair, just to explain some
Sure.
of my reaction too. There are times when the town's legal counsel will take a position on an issue that I may not agree with. I'll give you a real example. Jay Tellerman and I disagreed strongly over whether or not manufacturing outside a building was allowed as of right or not.
Right.
And he insisted that one comma in the zoning code made manufacturing outside of a building unlawful, and it required additional process. Actually would have required a variance, because it was a use not mentioned. Right? So I'm my own worst enemy. I went to law school, I got a law degree, I spent a lot of time doing municipal law as a student, and then have been in municipal government for a good part of my life, right? I just don't agree. But at the end of the day, my opinion counts for zilch. The town hires an attorney, the attorney says what he believes the law says, and even though it required us to upset a landowner and make them wait, and go through the whole process of drafting things and going to town meeting and people scratching their heads, why do we need this? And doing all of that, at the end of the day, we can sit here after the fact and say, we hired someone who's an attorney at law, in whom we have confidence as land use counsel, and followed their advice. So now, if anything ever came back on us, as a town, as the whole town, whether or not that landowner could ever have sued us for the loss of use of their property during the time that they waited for these changes to be made, nobody's going to hear that case, because we had an expert and we relied upon the expert. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on outside of this conversation in this room where I'm frustrated with people who are not following the advice of experts, not Douglas. It's people we work with in other communities who've been told a specific direction by the people qualified to tell them, and they're not doing it. So that's where I think the public's confidence gets undermined, is you get a bunch of lawyers and financial experts sitting around saying, the trust fund's out of money, you got to do something. And they all just sit there and, I don't know, right? We're not going to do that. We hire our experts, we follow their advice, because we are all generalists. Our skill set is different here in Town Hall, at least me and Jean. Jean has got her specialist as an accountant, but she also has a lot of impact in a lot of other things in the way the town runs, because we're generalists, right? We have a general sense of what something looks like when it's running properly and when it's not. But to actually do the work, we hire experts, so that we're leveraging the town's resources to get progress across a whole bunch of fronts at the same time. So, whether this ends up being it or not, I really got to get Highway Barn built. The other thing that troubles me is that we spend a tremendous amount of money on equipment, and it's getting more and more expensive. So the stuff we bought 3 years ago, we could never replace now for what we spent 3 years ago.
Well,
It's
I'm well aware of that.
way over the top. So the responsible thing for town officials to do, put that thing in a garage and take care of it, and do all the PMs on schedule, so that the thing lasts for as long as possible. Because by the next time we go, just as a crazy example, right, a couple of years back, the Capital Committee started a savings fund for fire equipment. And we were all concerned that ladder trucks, Quints, that's a ladder truck with a pump on it, it's called a Quint. A Quint was 1.25 million, right? And how are we ever going to replace our 1991 Quint when the time comes? You know what that thing costs now?
To 3 million?
No, not that much.
Yeah.
Not that much. But still, percentage-wise, it's a huge increase.
Oh, yeah.
It's now a $1.85 million
Wow,
truck. Just in 3 years.
yeah.
So there's stuff going on in the economy that is driving the costs of everything we buy up, and the only thing we can do as responsible people is take care of it. And we're not right now. We got stuff outside, we got stuff being exposed to the elements. So we got to take care of our people and take care of the assets of the town.
And the worst part of it with the equipment is it's all computerized.
Yeah.
And they don't, And then they stopped making the computers for you, and,
Okay, we got to
So
stick
we're
to
far
the,
afield, but I think we heard each other.
yeah,
Yep.
I appreciate the conversation.
yeah.
It'll get us to a good place.
Okay.
I'm sure of it.
And before.
One way or the other.
Just
Either-
one comment before you came on the board, Carol. This board went out at the request of the selectmen under Mr. Fitzpatrick and you, I believe, to look at the safety committee, boards, I'm sorry. We did. We toured. We went to we went to the fire department, we went to the highway department, and we went to the police department. And this board determined the highway needed to be taken care of. It was, and my concern personally is the health of the people working in that building. It is not good. And that's why we have a trailer out there for people that have to stay there a good part of the time to do the work of for the highway department. And the concern also is when we went in there and tried to move around to see what was happening and what they needed, you could barely move with the equipment in there and what was outside. And I'm not saying that's what we should, why would we be concerned with that when we're talking about a new building and so forth? We've got to get them out of there, wherever. So, and yes, I'm concerned about some of the things you said, but I've been around long enough to know that some of this stuff, when it was brought up, was poo-pooed and never taken care of. And that's, in some respects, some of the reasons we are where we are. That's all I'll have to say.
I've been around a long time, too, and actually in the business of
You can
of
be
this
in the
stuff.
business,
So, I mean,
but overall
Yeah.
view
I mean, I've
of
got-
the highway and bringing stuff, and any committee,
yeah,
you know, there are all
Oh, I
of
agree
them.
with
The
you.
fire department needs equipment, which we've worked on.
But we're in a much better.
And yes, because we've gotten expert people to do. Some we didn't agree with, and they've worked with Matt and the fire department and got that basically improved.
There's a lot of historians on this committee. If
Yeah.
history serves me, you've had a conversation about the highway barn,
For a long time.
but did you ever have a vote? But it was
I don't think so.
on people's short list
yeah.
Yeah,
in the 2000s. early.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's been on there for a long time.
yeah. All right, so you've got your where you're going to look for some more
Still
info.
doing more due diligence.
Yes.
I mean,
All
we
right.
have the tools we need to move forward if the due diligence comes back the way we hope.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
We do need those reports. All right, anybody? Ray, you're good?
I am good.
Okay. Guys, you're good?
You charging that
like to
Tesla,
move on.
Ray?
Uh-oh.
No, he's still driving, he's not charged.
Okay.
He is driving.
He is.
He's
Yeah.
moving.
Yeah.
I can't watch it either, I get car
Yeah,
sick.
no, I don't get car sick in a car. I get-
Okay, that's not
Well,
on the
it's a new world,
agenda.
isn't it?
Hold it. Let's move on. Oil spill, where we
So
were.
the formal process is where it was. But in terms of the building considerations, we have a balancing issue, a ventilation issue in the
Yep.
basement.
Okay.
And,
We're on oil spill?
yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
you will recall that the environmental consultant felt that his predecessor's recommendation that we do under the slab ventilation was completely unnecessary and would be a very big expense, and that the testing didn't justify it. We still detect some fumes in the basement. They're not coming from the ground. They can't possibly come from the ground. We dug the china down there. And if I don't know that, it wasn't really safe to have any of you go down there. I can show you the pictures. Adam has a lot of pictures. Literally, you'd stand on the floor and the guys in the hole, their top of their heads was at the bottom of the, was at the floor. So I think we're done with that. But it's definitely an issue because when you go down to the basement here, there are so many doors that close.
Okay.
The air just doesn't move at all. And the building was set up, if you remember, there was a lot of passive ventilation on the roof of this building. They looked like those great big tubes that were on battleships and other things in the years past, because that's how they got air into the bottom of those big vessels. And the same passive air system was used here in this building. Some of those were closed off, some of them, because it's just a bleeder for
Heat.
heat. So we need to push air out of the basement and bring fresh air in each time the furnace cycles. And at this point, we're actually, strangely enough, we're out of balance. We're actually, well, put it this way, the thing's trying to suck air, but all the doors are closed. So it's creating a lower pressure environment in the basement. The air doesn't move. So anything from the startup, just cleaning the furnace or anything that drips on the ground, all those fumes have nowhere to go. So the only thing we're doing is putting air into the furnace and the furnace shoots it out. So we're going to have additional ventilation installed in the basement. We're working on it now. We're trying to get some drawings done. It's not a major structural change at all. We're just going to go through the wall and have a proper-sized fan that is talking to the furnace, so when the furnace is about ready to start its cycle, we build up the proper amount of air. We may also have to change the way we manage the flow down there. The trouble is the building isn't perfectly secure. Try to keep youngins out of exploration mode. Right, they're upstairs, they're downstairs, they're all over the place, until we lock it down. Young people. The
okay.
gymnasium,
Okay, yeah. Okay, I got
the way
it.
the building is set up, the gymnasium and the stairs over there
Right.
become a way to get anywhere you want to.
Oh,
in the
really?
building,
Ah.
Unless we do our due diligence,
Yeah.
managing the property and keeping everything closed all the
Yeah.
time. People are clever.
Especially kids.
Sometimes the housekeeper, the firm that comes here and does janitorial stuff, they'll accidentally leave a door open.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Right, so now you got that issue. So that, long story short, Madam Chair, that's what we're doing. We're improving the ventilation downstairs, and then Pat, the environmental guy, will do another round of testing
Sure.
after we're properly
Okay.
venting the basement.
Thank you.
It's the
Any
kid that keeps on
questions?
Yeah, isn't like the highway, I mean, the police department is actually in part of the basement, right? Technically?
Yeah, but
Under this.
if you're familiar with, there's not a lot of ways to get from here to there,
Yeah.
because that was an
Yeah.
addition,
Oh, okay.
and that's the older
Okay, got
bowels
it.
of the building. So
Got
in
it.
between them and there's
Yeah.
actually only a
Okay.
crawl space.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody?
Nope.
We're good? Green communities, we did vote on some funds at the town meeting.
So I want to make sure, because I was confused about this, make sure everybody has the best available information. What we voted at town meeting was for the town's share of the funding of the projects.
Yes.
What the select board accepted the other night were the incentives provided by National Grid. And these were for LED projects on the school campus.
Okay.
So that's technically not a Green Communities project. That is a energy efficiency project for the town, and National Grid, because they're at the end of this cycle that they're doing, wanted to get their money out the door for LED projects.
Okay.
And we had some that were huge savings for the town. Not for us, unfortunately. For the school department, they don't give us our money back. We save them any money. Funny how
All
that
coming out
works.
of the same pot.
But put it this way, the return on investment is so fast on these LED projects, especially the high school and middle school, so we're going forward with those. That's what those are.
Okay.
We do not presently have, for this coming round, an active Green Communities proposal.
Okay.
And that's because we've done so many, if you think about it.
Sure.
the Green Communities work that's going to be done, no, I'm wrong. So the incentives were for town hall and the post office. The Green Communities work that we are applying for may involve the schools. Once all this is done, once all the lights are switched out, it's going to get much more difficult to identify opportunities to save electricity. Because frankly, at this point, we already use 17, 18% less. So that's despite the fact that we've added resources, we're still, our energy usage as a town is exemplary compared to our colleagues across the Commonwealth. We're down significantly on the total energy consumption. So it's working for us.
Okay.
I'm optimistic. You know, we have new windows in this building. Now the roof is on with much thicker insulation upstairs. We've tightened this building between Mike Kuzinski and Bill Cundiff in our time here. A lot of changes have occurred in this building, making it much, way more energy efficient than it ever
Right.
was when it was in school.
Anybody? Questions for Matt? We're good? Okay, the municipal main roof replacement.
So we have pretty much finished as of yesterday. There was a guy
Their
that kind of looked
copper.
like a Smurf yesterday with his hat, Smurf hat, crawling around on the edges here, soldering all of the joints for the copper flashing.
Okay.
Hopefully he did it right. It's been a chore. You know, not everybody knows how to solder copper. It's got to be clean. You got to use the proper solder, and you got to pay attention. So, project manager for Weston was focused on one seam. There are actually 8 seams up there. So, let's come back and do the other 7, please. So, that's where we are. So we're at closeout. I'm expecting them to send us closeout. Once again, project management. This was something we insisted on, right? So they were going to go up there and use GeoCell gel adhesive. Most people in the building industry know what that is. It comes in a tube, it's sticky, it lasts for a couple of years, and then it goes away. That's not an acceptable application for a building like this. So,
Yeah.
and that's Selectman Fitzpatrick's catch, because he's willing to go on the roof and I am not. Although he did go something over tea kettle up there the other day when it was a little bit slippy.
Whoops.
He's authorized though. What we discovered while we were up there, this is not on your agenda, but I think it's important to bring it up. Several years ago, we did the gym roof, the
Yes.
gymnasium roof. And I think that was right when I started.
Yeah.
Conversation may have been before I started here, but then it was done at town meeting, actually after the override, because I think it was one of the capital projects that we
Yeah.
were able to do. The roof installer that did that installation, let's put it this, I'm practicing diplomacy today. They were the low bidder,
Okay,
Yeah.
the low bidder.
not always the best.
And didn't exactly have the greatest DCAM record, but got the job anyway, because they were the low bidder. And here we are 5 years later, the guys are up doing the main roof. Experienced roofers knew what they were looking at. They looked over at the gym and said, yeah, there's something wrong over there. Because it doesn't, the water sits up there for a long time and it looks like it's not laying right. And we had done over the summer a little bit of investigation there because there was some insect infiltration and we thought we killed them off and thought we had done it. But so we invited the previous installer to come and do an inspection. Now, a lot of people in town aren't aware of this. In order to maintain your warranties on your roofs, you must do regular inspections of problem areas or potential problem areas, carefully document everything, and communicate when there are issues. Adam Furno's paperwork is flawless, right? So every single time you're supposed to go up there, look at nail holes, look at seams, he's got it all. So we went to Versico and said, seems to be a warranty issue on the gym roof. And Greenwood came and said, nah, right, there's nothing to see here, move along. And they squirted some geocell or some roofing adhesive in one spot and rubbed it around with their thumb. And then they stuck a screw in one of the outlets, one of the perforations up there, and said they did a bunch of work for us, billed us $2,100. The work wasn't authorized, so I'm not paying it, first of all, not paying it. Second of all, we got Greenwood fired, basically. So
I'm sorry, who's Greenwood?
they're the installer for the gym roof, a roofing company of some note. They are frequently the low bidder. So our guys that were doing the main roof here were qualified Versico acceptable contractors. So we switched out Greenwood, we had those guys do it, and we ended up pulling up a big chunk of the roof over the gym. Really good news. The water didn't damage the decking or any of the wood, but the insulation was saturated. There were carpenter ant presence all throughout. It was a pretty, it was like the Riviera, if you were an ant. So it was all the material was lifted, dried off, replaced, restored, and then the roof restored over the top. And we did not void the warranty because we used Versico, a Versico-approved vendor. So that was taken care of. So at this point, we should be all done on the roof of the building, which I know you're excited about, because now we can do the fire alarm project, which I lose sleep over, because I'm going to tell you the number's going to come back, and it's not going to be a fun number at all.
No, it's not. And we've had that on the agenda.
So that's our segue. So
Yeah.
this is me managing expectations as best I can.
Yes.
The building is old. It got repopulated in a piecemeal fashion, right? So we've got the police station kind of on its own in the basement floor. We had a school presence up on the second floor, and the need for devices that talk to each other, and not a lot of money. So the town did the best it could. I mean, it's what we all do when we don't have money, right? We make do with what we have. So you really have 2 fire alarms, 1 system in the police station, 1 over here, and it's old.
Do they communicate with each other?
They do
Maybe.
communicate with each other as best we know.
Okay.
And it's all monitored downstairs at dispatch. The one thing the signal from the panel goes downstairs.
Yeah.
They can see what goes on. So we have a lot of good stuff that happens here because the police are in this building 24/7. We can sleep at night on that score. But this is going to be a much more complicated project. The upstairs above the ceiling, between the ceiling and the roof, is a fairly significant space, crawl space. Back in the day, you did not need to have any kind of fire detection or heat detection or smoke or anything up there. Now you will need to install all that. We're bringing in a brand-new fire service connection on the Depot Street project. So once we have a proper sprinkler service connection in the building and we talk about going upstairs, the one thing we have to do with the alarm system is make sure that it is designed properly to talk to the sprinkler system when and if it's installed. Right, so there has to be that. Those signals have to come through. So I would anticipate this fire alarm is going to be a pretty big ticket item. It's not a $38,000 project. I think at one time, we were kind of hoping that a low voltage electrician would kind of make the building safe. Maybe you could have done that for 38 grand, but now it's
No.
much more expensive than that. So it'll be on the capital budget request at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Any questions on that, Linda?
So the fire alarm and sprinkler system should absolutely be done at the same time.
Or the fire alarm that is installed should be designed to accommodate the sprinkler system.
But
So
we
you
won't
might
know
do design,
Yeah.
of the sprinkler system so you get the right alarm. But you don't necessarily have to
Okay.
do it at the same time, because you might be able to, it's not plug and play, but you
I
might be
hate the
able-
word might, or should. It should work.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, if economic development continues to generate sufficient revenue flow, the highest and best use of this building is to occupy every single square
Right.
foot of it, so that it's more efficient use of resources. So you're not heating and cooling and doing all the rest for a whole floor of the building that's not being used. We do that, by the way, because we have plumbing up there. We can't let it get freezing cold. And that will help you manage the space constraints of the police department. It's not going to be pretty. You're making use of a building that wasn't designed for this. This is the best building in Worcester County. I'll have that debate with anybody. This is a fantastic building. And if we take care of it, it'll serve the town of Douglas for another 100 years. I think we should have a party for the place and drink a bottle of champagne on the
I like
cornerstone.
parties.
So I follow up
So-
with that.
Could I ask a question?
Are you finished? Did you get a response to what you were
So, because,
asking?
I don't want to see this project, sprinklers and the
Fire alarm?
fire, go the way of like, the cameras at the schools. All of a sudden, we found out they didn't communicate with each other, and I just want to make sure that, it's
Working.
not going to cost us twice as much as doing them separately,
Right.
you know?
Okay, you got your answer?
Yeah.
Okay,
Now, do we have
Yeah.
any type of sprinklers in here now?
not upstairs.
No.
Oh, not upstairs, okay. And so, but the fire alarm will go in before the sprinklers, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we got to get rid of this thing.
Right,
It
right.
ain't all that.
Because the fact that it's communicating together is really good, because if the sprinklers decide all of a sudden they want to go off, it could cost us a fortune. But
Yep.
if you can get them right away,
Yeah.
if they're communicating and they go, oh, wait a minute, we got to do something quick. I
Okay.
can see a weekend when the sprinklers are going for a weekend,
You
so.
got your answer?
I do, I think so, yes.
Anyone else? Ray, you're good?
Good.
Okay. All right, thanks. Fire station upgrade, we're moving along.
So the project's coming to a close on the bidding process. Subcontractors, their deadline was 2 days ago. So general contractors now have until December 26th to complete their electronic bid and submit their final bids.
Again, Matt, that's under opera funds?
So these are ARPA funds and town meeting funds.
Okay.
Couple of notes. One is, we're not exactly waiting for this to be done in order to make some changes to the building that we felt were very cost-effective. So there's a space in the northwest corner of the building. No, excuse me. I'm all spun around. Southeast corner of the building. That was a sleeping quarter before.
Yeah?
And then we're going to put that to storage because it was not safe place for people to sleep, because the only air that was going into that space was coming from the bays.
Oh,
And again, there's a negative pressure issue. So there was contamination both from turnout gear and also a small amount from the exhaust from
Yeah.
vehicles. We have a system that grabs the exhaust and pushes it outside, but you start up a vehicle, you pull it out, you gotta
sure.
detach that hose at some point. And then the air didn't move, it stayed in the building. The trailers we have outside are not really not a good use of those trailers. That's not what they're designed for. They're supposed to be office space,
Yeah.
not sleeping quarters for firefighters. So we've done this for a couple of years. We got to this point now, we are out to bid on the main project. So we cut a window and installed an air handler for that room. that necessitated the installation of a fire escape for the window, so there's a ladder there now, and there's a pad on the bottom, so that if anybody is in that space, they can get out without having to go across the... That is pretty much done. So it was, all of the pieces of that were well below $10,000, and the funding came from ARPA,
Okay.
because we reprogrammed money from Weston and Sampson's highway design, because there was more than they needed sitting there, and we moved it over to that and got the work done. So you'll see those trailers disappear. It was just a cost thing. For the cost of renting the trailers, we did the work inside, so it's a one-off. And it brings people back in the building. The HVAC electrical project has an add alternate component, which is sprinklers. So if the bids come in within range and the add alternate is affordable, we will sprinkler the building. The fire service connection is appropriate, it's code compliant, it's already in the building.
Okay.
If we ever, it's not if, when we build a small addition on the side of the building, it will trigger the sprinkler requirement. So we're trying to get ahead of this by
Okay.
having the sprinkler design done and installed, and then it'll dead end at the wall where we think the addition will go eventually. So that when it's time to take that wall out, the sprinkler system will be there to attach to for sleeping quarters. I'm optimistic that will come in. I think one of the things that has inflated a lot of projects is the cost of the generator. So the cost estimators are very conservative in what they say they think that this will be bid at. I'm hoping that's where we save a fair amount of money. But one last note about ARPA funds, and I'll just kind of clicks off your number 3, because this is the last ARPA funded project on your agenda. I might as well talk about it. There's a certain amount of business acumen I think you need to have in town administration. The ARPA funds were given to us to replace general revenue, even though we didn't actually have a big revenue drop-off in this town because of COVID. It still was the federal program. We were formula eligible, so it wasn't like a competitive grant. They came in and they gave us millions of dollars, right? Some of it we did spend right away, but most of it we did not. Why are we rushing here at the end? There's a good reason. The rules allowed us to invest that money under the same rules that we invest the general fund unrestricted surplus in. So Bartholomew managed this money. Now, if you are a saver or an investor, we just went through a period of time with high interest rates. So the town invested its ARPA money into 12-month treasury bills and brought in over $250,000 that went to free cash. So while we waited, the cost of ductile iron pipe fell,
Phil,
and
that's amazing.
we earned money on the balance that we had in our account. So the financial management, and I credit Jean and Cheryl Vadia with being savvy enough to take these steps and get the town some money investing other people's money. So it all worked out. I hate anything that sounds like self-promotion, but once in a while you have to kind of do that. This isn't the junior varsity team that you have here.
Right.
We weren't born yesterday. Good municipal management, you sweep your accounts on a regular basis and invest the money so that it's working for the taxpayer.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the pipes that you're talking about, just for the people may watch this, is for the Depot Street water project,
So the Depot Street project, we did
ARPA funds.
Those are all ARPA funds,
Yeah.
true, so we got those funds out the door.
Oh,
The strategy for horizontal projects that aren't buildings, we're allowed under Chapter 30, Section 39M, to purchase supplies separate from the labor. frequently towns do this because then the general contractor doesn't put any markup.
Yeah.
So we go out to bid and we get the lowest price for the supplies. The key is to make sure you have a good design engineer and you order all the right parts.
Yes.
So I'm confident that Stantec has all the right stuff out there, and Bob Sullivan's been around a long time and serves the town very well. My brother-in-law is working on the water plant in Taunton, and they didn't do this. So they have all the wrong size
Oh, God.
and incompatible manufacturers, and they're trying to make this thing work with stuff that doesn't work together. So just because the statute's there doesn't mean you're using it properly. You got to make sure your designer is actually part of the bidding process and gets the right stuff in the door. So that's why it came early, because that was an easier bid to do than the rest of it. I just awarded the contract, I know it's not on your agenda, it seems, but it's important for this building. We just awarded the contract for the water pipe and road work here to C. Naughton. We've not worked with Naughton before, they do have a good reputation. It includes the sidewalk.
Good.
That's kind of a big deal. Because now there won't be anything left that needs to be addressed. I know it seems like a shame, Depot Street really isn't in bad shape,
I know.
but the pipes are,
Yeah.
so it's time.
And in order to put sprinkler systems in
We
here.
had to do a new connection here,
Yes.
and that's part of the project.
Yep.
Vacant buildings, I'm ready when you
Well,
are.
questions on fire station and opera funds and anybody? Okay. Vacant buildings.
Thank you to town meeting. So we did our A&R, we have a saleable lot on Gleason Court,
Oh, yeah.
Good.
and a draft RFP. I'm going to review that RFP. Mr. Benoit wrote it. The people who have approached us as potentially interested in this building for some time are very high credibility folks here in this part of Massachusetts that do really big projects. They're just intrigued by the building.
It's a beautiful building.
It's a beautiful building, so I'm confident that once we go out to bid, we'll have good responses. This is going to be done as, because it can, under Chapter 30B, Section 16, a scoring system. So this is not just highest bid. So we are able to inquire into the merits of the project being proposed, and that can be taken into consideration when we determine who we're going to sell it to. So we don't have to sell it for the highest price. We'll sell it to the suitor that proposes a project that's most acceptable to the town. Like all bids, it includes language, the town reserves the right to reject any and all bids in its own interests. So if people come in here and suggest a bunch of things that the town doesn't want, we just won't accept it. But I think the things that were really big barriers to this building being reused have been removed. So now there's ample space for parking
Right.
and access. So I'm confident in that. As far as our other vacant buildings, it's up to Capitol to give us the dough this year to take the little brown house down. The raccoon condominium.
Before we go into that, so the school building, vacant building, now enough room. As building and facilities, before this goes out to bid, and then it gets out there and we're like, wait a minute, what is our responsibility as a board?
You'll get the draft.
Of the
The
RFP.
draft. So
The
it won't
draft.
go anywhere until, but I'm going to review it first.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to review it
And-
for technical compliance.
And before it's up for any kind of a decision, not having to call a special meeting, we need to have some discussion on it, if we need to, whatever our responsibility is as building and facilities. Okay?
we're going to, we'll
Grammar school
process
down
this.
behind the.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We'll
Yeah.
follow the process to build consensus like we always do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The motion that passed at town meeting directed the select board.
Yes,
However, the select board pays attention to this board.
yes,
So we will go through this board first.
thank you. Just so we're on the same page.
Yeah, and I think we got to make sure that we don't
Carol?
drag things out.
No.
You know, you got to,
Talk about dragging things
Yeah.
out. This building's been
right.
for sale.
Oh, I know.
Forever.
But I mean, but now we
Not just
we
this,
look like we're going to have some action in it. You drag things out and all of a sudden something happens and then it ends,
Yeah.
you know? So it's going to be so nice to see that beautiful building brought back to life.
Carol, I'm sorry, Linda?
So, but we did vote on this grammar school to, at this board, to leave it up to the selectmen, because it was one of our vacant building things to look at.
It is, but in terms of
Do we need to vote?
what this committee does a great job of is, this is now a video. If people want to watch it,
Yeah,
it's posted on the public, and it doesn't bog the select board down in hours of conversation.
Yeah.
So this is a good place to have a lot of the discussion.
But my question is, does this board need to vote on anything here?
Legally, technically, probably not, but
probably not.
All right.
But we are responsible
Right.
to the decisions or recommendations to the Board of Selectmen.
yeah.
That was my concern. We've already done that,
But to sell
or
it,
have we?
I'm not
I'll
sure.
have to look at the
Yes.
tapes again.
But again, it's what's, we,
Process is good, transparency is good.
Yeah,
The more
I
we
mean-
talk about it, the better it's going to be.
nobody knew, or at least I got the impression, nobody knew that it was on this piece of land that needed it bigger. When I asked for the plot plan, oh, so that's why it got, okay. That's my concern. Thank you.
I have a question then.
Yes.
So that scoring system, that's done by the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, but the RFP is a public document, so I mean, yeah, all right. You could have a question of, if the bids come in, where are they opened and who gets to see them first, right? I'm over my skis to overcommit, so I'll get the select board to formally invite this board to participate in the process. That way we can share because it's not a public document. RFPs are not a public document. A response to this form of RFP are not necessarily public. The only thing are required by law to publish is the list of the people who submitted proposals and their addresses. I don't need to show the scoring system to anyone until after it's over. So if the board wants to broaden the conversation, I'll put it on the agenda for
I think
the
that makes sense.
26th to do that.
Thank you.
Good.
Carol?
I've got a couple of questions. Do we have kind of like more than one person interested? And then the other thing is, when you said you say who the people are who want to bid on it, so ABC Company, will that also include what they say they want to do with it? Will they do it at that point, tell you what they want to do with it?
Absolutely. So the nice thing about 30B, Section 16
Yeah.
is the select board can
Yeah,
very finely tailor what they're willing to accept
Right.
for a proposal. And that is entirely within their purview. So that's a specific authorization in the
Right.
statute. So if you recall, on the raw land on
Yep.
Webster Street, on the
Yep.
Webster border,
right,
the select board said, we will not sell it for just any Joe Blow.
yeah,
We want an economic development project
Yep.
that will result in a commercial building.
yeah,
So that's all we got in response to that. And the same was true of some land I think we auctioned off or sold off as part of the bigger development on the other side of town. There had to be a project associated with the land.
okay,
Now, in this case, I think that's one of the things that the drafting of the RFP process is going to be about.
yeah,
How is housing the best use? Is there other uses that people want to tailor? Just the more restrictive you make it, the less likely you are to have a broad pool
Right.
of bidders.
right,
just because people have approached us about it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they're the only ones who'll get the, this has to be advertised.
Right, I understand that.
And we'll send it out to pretty much anybody we think is in this business.
Yeah,
Answer your question?
yep, that I did my question.
Anybody else? Fred, anything more? You're good with what you got? Okay,
Excuse me. One last thing about that.
yeah.
The method of sale might also be an issue of conversation. So sometimes we prefer sealed bids, but that is not the only way we can do this. So, although here, I think it might be the only thing we can do, is to have a price proposal on a separate envelope. When I can, I try to get live auction on especially real estate, because you might have somebody who's a really strong suitor, and it might be your preferred use, and you don't want to see them outbid in a sealed bid. Because the person with the sealed bid may want to make it into, a low-income tax credit, a low-income housing tax credit project, and it can take years before you see it materialize.
Yeah,
So, but unfortunately, I think we'll just open the price envelope and make that one of the criteria that gets rated. Will be price. We won't wait to open it separately.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're good? Questions?
A little sausage making there, but
I do have this question. Does that have any, like, historical liens? I don't know what this, I'm probably not using the right
Like on the
words.
historical register?
Right, right. Where
don't
maybe
believe
they could, maybe whoever's doing this could get some money to help them do that?
I don't think it is, Shirley.
as soon as I say something that's probably wrong,
Okay, all right, I didn't mean,
but I'll go out on venture on this branch anyway.
yeah,
My research indicates
yeah,
that the town went only so far with the process of designating
okay,
buildings and districts,
right,
and did not go all the way to
That's right.
extending the historical protections to certain
okay,
buildings.
okay, all right,
Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe you are. And to add to that, when issues come up about historic situations in town, it comes, first of all, more than likely to the Douglas Historical Society, which it does not belong there because the Douglas Historical Society is private.
Right.
The town doesn't benefit, or I should say, the town doesn't put money into it. It's the commission that makes or works on decisions
Right.
of historic districts and,
Historical Commission.
yeah. Do we have one?
yes.
Is it active?
Yes.
Yes.
The board is appointed, the commission is appointed.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
But the junk store is also on the National Register,
Of-
which I don't think any of our other buildings in
Right.
town are.
I don't believe so either.
Yeah. I've looked
So,
at it.
and I try to forward stuff from the Historical Society, which I am on, back to whoever sent it, or to the,
Sometimes you sent that stuff as mandatory notice, because
Yeah.
the Historical Society will be on the list of mandatory
yes.
commentators.
But I do want the commission involved, because that's part of what they do.
This is far afield, but I'm going to go here anyway. I'll say, make 2 points. I know it's getting late,
Yeah.
but these are important.
Yes,
The RFP, if it doesn't already have it in there, it will have in it, because it's just, I feel really strongly
Yeah.
about this. The exterior of the building is to be maintained in its historical state.
that's
That includes, and this will be the sticking point, windows.
yeah,
So if you want to put in energy-efficient windows, nobody's going to stop you.
right,
But you will not change the openings.
okay, got it.
That's really where I am at, because when you walk that building and you're on the stairway,
Yes.
and you have the beautiful arched window that right now is boarded up, you don't experience the natural
Yeah.
light
Right.
passing through that
Yeah.
building.
Right,
But that is an absolutely fantastic feature of that building. It
It
needs to be
is.
preserved, and it's part of the town. In a way, I'm glad you didn't go all the way with some of the restrictions. So and I'll feel this way to my grave, being the Economic Development Director in the city of Woonsocket. Now, a lot of people around here think there's a force field on the Rhode Island border and you don't go down there. If you have an eye for architecture, you
Right.
drive around Woonsocket,
Right,
there are spectacular
Yes.
Gilded Age buildings in
Yeah.
that town.
There are.
And one of them's being fixed up now. Gary Fernandez, thank God, got the work to fix the old Longley building, which is on the corner of Arnold and Main.
okay.
It was a department store at one time. It wasn't McCarthy's. McCarthy's was
Yeah.
across the street. But it's going to be completely restored, and Gary doesn't take no for an answer. He just does it.
Yeah.
He does it right. So he did River Falls.
Okay,
So if
yeah.
you're familiar with that
Nice,
building, gorgeous building. Some of the most beautiful buildings in the city are falling down or have already been destroyed because they're protected by historic
Yeah,
register standards. I can remember having Ted Sanderson, who was the long-term Historic Preservation Commission chairman for the state. There's a building on Hamlin Avenue. There were mill buildings that were there, Miller Electric was there, and Consumers Oils across the street. They tore all the mills down and built the middle schools, the two Woonsocket middle schools, side by each.
in Woonsocket.
There's a building there that most people don't know. That was the president's office. And when you drive by it now, it's completely falling in. The windows are all
Bad.
out and the roof is falling down. There were custom circular and octagonal windows, gorgeous hardwood floors from an age that you'll never see planks that wide again. It was, at one time, a very, very prosperous mill, and that's why it got so big and lasted so long. Ted insisted that the mortar be some red sand mortar from Arizona, whatever, right? And so by the time we sat there, because it was city property, and tried to figure out what it was going to cost,
Yeah,
it was millions and millions of dollars.
Right.
You would never, ever, ever get even a fraction of that back.
right,
And now that you built the schools,
yeah.
you really had limited parking and all these kids running around and all the rest of it. So now, this beautiful piece of the history of the Blackstone Valley
Yeah.
is going to have to be destroyed
That's too bad.
because we got in our own way.
Yeah,
The little building
yeah,
that was next to it, people call it the guard shack. It's not the guard shack. That was the president's house. So the people that built the mills in Woonsocket were Belgian entrepreneurs. They hired French Canadians, because they spoke French, to work in their Belgian mills. The guy would come over from Belgium and he would stay in this little brick building. It's actually very nice inside. The city spent $650,000 rehabbing a building that's about 400 square feet.
wow.
Right. And at the end of the day, the architect still had the roof gutter drain onto the concrete steps.
Ah.
But that to me should have been a 60-minute story about the waste of CDBG funds. Those are the problems you have if you tie up good properties with all these restrictions. So the place to do the protection is in the RFP, in the way that you devise it and not
Right,
in advance, because it just turns into a runaround. One other story, because I think it's important, I was on the board of directors for years at the Stadium Theater. Now, that's a gorgeous building, right?
Yes.
When we were going up to the second floor, above the marquee, it's called a marquee room now, because
Right.
it's a performance space, like
Yeah.
a black box theater. We had to replace the windows above the marquee. Now, those were old pulley
Yeah.
and string windows. On the historic register, we had to replace those windows with custom work, right? So we took the project from a couple $100,000 to go over $1 million. So if there weren't grant funding available for it, it wouldn't have happened. And then all the grant money got thrown into that and wasn't dispersed around the city where it could have been
Right.
put to other uses. So,
I
it's a shame.
wasn't suggesting that this building should be
No.
put in the historical, I was just thinking if it already was,
that's-
perhaps it'd be.
That's
could get-
why I think
could
the
get some
town
money
was
back,
wise not
but-
to, though.
Yeah, I think you're
Right.
right, yeah.
Yes. Bill?
Will you inform the historical commission of what we're discussed so far?
I'm sorry?
Will you give the historic commission heads up that this is being discussed?
Yes, we can. Yep. And what other building are we,
There was a VFW.
the VFW?
And the fire
Which is the little school and the old fire station. Any,
Nothing.
nothing changed? There was some concern about the tower falling down?
Still falling.
Still there.
I'm surprised it hasn't fallen down.
No, but
That's your
this,
update, it's still there.
yeah, but there was one issue that was a safety that you were concerned about, Fred.
Just the,
Well, the steps are gone, right? We pulled the steps down.
yeah, you
Okay.
So
can't get up.
they don't have access to it.
But there used to be guy wires holding that up, which don't exist anymore, so I think,
But you're talking about the tower.
The wooden
I'm talking about the
attached.
wooden part of the fire station.
All right, so the little tower on top
Yeah.
was the staircase went up to it?
Right, which has been blocked up, but there's evidence of steel wires that used to go up to the roof of that to keep it,
Yeah.
and they don't exist anymore.
So
But
you're,
we've discussed this before, so.
rightfully so, but are you okay that with you got your answers for what you're looking
Sure.
for? Anyone else? Okay, Library Board of Trustees. Anybody have any comments from,
My only advice, they've done a really great job raising a lot of money. So kudos to the trustees and to Justin for
Yeah.
doing a really great job of lining things up. I think he came in to see me and said, we got this great number. And I said, well, unfortunately, in the world we live in, as much money as that is, it's still going to be a lot more than that. So I think we're still open to what they want to talk about, but I think we're very sensitive to the fact that we don't want to go to town meeting with a whole bunch of drawings, a whole bunch of, and
because we've been there
then not
before.
do the project.
We've been there
So
before.
I think we got to get to the point where they can at least identify the funding sources that they'll use to go where they want to go. This is one place where I feel like even though the trustees are kind of running their own show and it's their building, and that's the way the law has been set up, it's not really a town building.
But it does
It
receive
falls under
town
you. It
funds.
falls under you, but it doesn't fall under me. If we had a facilities manager, and I am authorized to post the position, I think this is a place where we could leverage expertise to help the trustees determine exactly what they want to do. Because I think there's still an open question. Exactly what do you want to build there or rehab?
Keep it open.
It's a sticker shock issue. And when you want to work in an older building like that and add something to it and bring it up to code, there is no inexpensive way to do it. It just isn't. It gets really expensive really fast. And at the end of the day, it's often still cheaper than building new. Depending.
All right. Anybody, any questions? We have minutes to approve. If not, November 7th and November 18th. And any comments
I do
on
on
November 7th?
On the 7th, let's see. That was the site walk we did.
Yes.
At the future highway barn property. Absent, we said people that were there, we should say, but it was more for BFCC. It was our meeting called to order.
Yes.
So Ray was absent.
Okay.
And we should mention what this is about, because nowhere does it say the location of the property. Let's say, after the meeting was called to order, or we might put it in the heading somewhere. This is for the 16 and 18 Rydell Road, parcel 187, map 20 and 25 should be added, just because it's hard to locate. You don't know if you're coming off of Main Street or Rydell, and at this point, it could be either or. And,
Is that a motion, Linda?
no, there's no motion, it's just that I'm correcting the minutes. I'm not approving
Okay.
anything yet.
Okay. All right.
And, yeah, so we just need to indicate exactly where the site walk
Yes.
is, and, yeah.
Okay.
And that was the only, and then the last sentence in that big paragraph says, John Furno stated that his opinion of the property is that it is the best fitting for the highway department needs, and that should probably say that this is the best fit for the highway department needs.
Okay.
I don't know, I'm not an English major. The best fitting,
Best fit for the highway
Yeah.
department needs, yeah.
and that was
Okay.
all I had.
Everybody okay with that?
When it said the people that were there, should it say and other interested parties? Because there were other people there that weren't on any committees. I think I saw Andy Leonard was there, and wasn't Andy there?
Andy was present.
Right, my brother was there, I think some other,
And your brother's name?
Tom Hutton.
Well, they would be like
They're
in
not-
the audience.
They would, I would, yeah, I don't think they have to be named, I'd just maybe say other interested parties, or.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Andy's angle is he's on the highway department building project in Upton. He's on
Oh,
the
okay,
building committee.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think other interested parties.
Anybody else have anything? If not, do I hear a motion to approve as corrected or amended?
So moved?
Second.
Who is that, Bob?
Yeah.
Bob Wormy. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thanks, Ray. All right, and on November 18th,
I noticed Ray is still not here. Ray, were you here on the 18th, November? By Zoom, or?
Well, I think the 18th I was there, was I not?
I think so.
I don't know.
I- But
Right there.
usually you indicate with your presence.
Well, this
The
was,
only one I wasn't there was the one that was on the Monday that, or you guys did a walkthrough, and I wasn't there for that. So I don't know, was that the Monday or was that the Wednesday?
this was the day we went to town meeting. That was a Monday.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes,
No, I
yes.
was not there.
And that was November 7th, and that's already
I'm
been
talking about the
corrected.
18th.
Today.
It was the day we went to town meeting. We
Yes.
called this meeting because it was going to town meeting. We
Yes.
needed to vote on the
He
highway.
was here the 7th, he wasn't here the 18th, is that right?
Well, the 7th was a site walk.
I just feel like Ray was here.
Yeah, I thought
At a
Ray
recent
was. Ray, did you come to the site walk?
No.
No, he didn't.
No.
I did not.
Okay.
And on the 18th was the day of town meeting, so we had to call a special meeting just so we
said he wasn't
could
here.
get the vote in.
Yeah, well, he knows where he was.
Yeah.
Just- I think we're all
Why are we
checking our
still
own-
talking
we're
about it?
checking our own compass to see where the heck were we.
Okay.
Somebody
It
could,
felt like he was here.
somebody could review the tape, and
Could we leave that open until somebody reviews the
Sure.
tape?
so we'll vote on it in the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good idea.
Well, Ray knows where he was.
Does he?
Does he? I
Do you
have,
know if you were there?
I mean, I'm the guy who gets
Ray?
lost walking down the hall.
me too.
Yes or no?
We'll leave it open.
Okay.
Leave it open, we can look at the tape. And then
All right,
take care of that.
Yes. All right, so our next
Oh,
meeting.
wait a minute, and I had another one. When we did vote on it, it said, and this was at the 57-3T timestamp, says, the motion to the select board to take by eminent domain, and it said the vote passed unanimously. Well, I know I abstained,
Right.
Okay, so
so that's a correction. But
And-
that's all I have.
I just need to write it in here. 55? Yep,
Right down here,
okay.
right above the two.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay. So Linda,
I abstained, so it didn't pass unanimously.
thank you. Anybody else? Good?
But we still got to approve it next meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Upcoming meetings, December 18th and January 15th. Do we have any other questions, comments?
Wait a minute. This is December 18th.
That's today.
Yeah, yeah.
Christmas is in
Sorry.
a week, guys.
Sorry,
Lots of big
that's
shopping.
right.
Too soon.
Just here.
And this is our.
So our next
So,
one is January.
January 15th. Yes, thank you. All right. Any other questions, comments? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
What time you got, Carol?
It is 11:43.
11:43.
Make a motion to adjourn at that time.
Second.
Motion made by Linda, seconded by Bob Wormy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Ray, if you, the recorder didn't hear him, voted also.